Jet Fighter, Japanese kabuki-style drama. The real drama is unfolding in the Far East. Japan found itself in the grip of geopolitical predators, Russia and China. Due to the fact that the world is facing regional conflicts flaring up here and there, the Japan Air Defense Force, JASDF, urgently needs a modern fighter jet. Parity in the air is the main argument in favor of peace, albeit fragile, in the region. For more than 10 years, until 2020, the Japanese were looking for technical partners for the new F-3. America's Lockheed Martin and Boeing and the British BAE Systems were among the candidates. Let us recall that American companies are involved in the creation of sixth-generation fighters for the U.S. Air Force and Navy, and the British are developing a sixth-generation fighter under the Tempest program together with Rolls-Royce. However, the land of the rising sun is at risk of facing a technological gap. The F-15J DJ Eagle and F-2AB fighters, the backbone of Japan's air shield today, are about to become obsolete, and the modern F-3 fighter as a replacement is not yet ready. Therefore, the Japanese government explained Kawabanga, and the long-suffering Project FX, this is how the Japanese traditionally designate projects for updating the military aircraft fleet, received long-awaited funding. The result will be the sixth-generation F-3. The deadline for the Japanese Air Force to have enough aircraft to renew its current fleet of fighters is 2035. Will the Japanese be able to build the F-3 by the time the Russian Su-57 and Chinese Chengdu J-20 fifth-generation fighters will become mass aircraft in their countries? In fact, the FX project was launched around 2010 to create a super-modern F-3 aircraft for the Japanese Air Force. For the record, this is the fourth FX program in the country's history. The Japanese were forced to start their own research by the position of the US military. We will tell you about the setup of the Americans later. At first, things were very slow. There was enough money to develop several promising ideas in the field of avionics and engine building. The electronics were tested on the advanced demonstrator, the fifth-generation Mitsubishi X2 Shinshin fighter, built in a single copy. By the way, the project of the fifth-generation X2 fighter remained unrealized and was frozen at the prototype stage. However, the attempt was not worthless. Apparently, the future Japanese F-3 will still inherit some characteristics of that aircraft. For example, Mitsubishi Electronics engineers have created their own AFAR radar for the F-3, which is not inferior in its characteristics to the AN/APG-81. An active phased antenna array radar developed by Northrop Grumman Electronic Systems for the F-35 fighters. In addition, the F-3 will implement an ultra-fast system for processing and transmitting information from all surveillance equipment, ground-based radars, and drones. We should recall that it was the insufficient data processing speed that became the main disadvantage of the AN/APG-81. The Americans plan to get rid of the vulnerabilities only by 2024. We are also talking about technologies that ensure stealth. This is one of the main features for sixth-generation fighters. In this regard, the F-3 is expected to match the best American fighters, which surpass the Russian Su-57 in stealth. We should recall that the aircraft's visibility is characterized by its effective scattering area. Lockheed Martin's F-35 keeps this figure secret, although third-party experts estimate it at 0.2 to 0.3 square meters. American engineers claim 10,000ths at certain scanning angles. So an object like this looks no more than a tennis ball on an enemy's radar. The new F-3 is designed with composite materials and fewer rivets. The Japanese are strong in this area. There will be no failures here. But you should not pay attention to the exterior of the Mitsubishi X2 Shinshin prototype. This is just a flying testing ground for technology. In fact, the S2 is close to the Saab Gripen, and it's close to the F-22 Raptor in terms of shape. The real exterior of the F-3 is still unknown, so it's too early to assess its effective scattering area. However, you can be sure that this figure will be no worse than the American counterparts. This is why Lockheed Martin was invited as a partner. Finally, as a result of many years of research, the concept of a new engine for the F-3 appeared. The power plant should have a compactness, increased thrust, and the ability to change the thrust vector by 20 degrees. In this regard, the Japanese have the most tangible success. On April 10, 2019, the prototype of the power plant, which got the XF91 index, passed the first bench test. The goals were met. The engine of the future F-3 fighter turned out to be 30% more powerful than the General Electric F-110 engine, which the F-15 and F-16 are equipped with. And the thrust at the afterburner of 15,000 to 16,500 kgf exceeds the thrust of the AL-31F engine for the Su-27. It should be recalled that Sukhoi has the figure of 12,500 kgf, which still makes it a fast fighter. Moreover, at this stage of development, the power of the XF-9 for the F-3 is comparable to the capacity of the Pratt & Whitney's F-119, which the F-22 Raptor is equipped with. The XF-9 engine, the Japanese F-3, automatically becomes one of supermaneuverable fighters. High maneuverability is another essential attribute of the 6th generation fighters. To achieve this figure, a new ceramic-based composite was created. The turbine casing was made of it. The old nickel-based alloy could withstand no more than 1400 degrees Celsius. Plus, some parts of the turbine were printed on a 3D printer. 3D printing technology increases the reliability of the unit thanks to the high precision. 3D printing also reduces the total cost of the unit. Among the other achievements of the FX project, the 180 kilowatt starter generator deserves special attention. It gives the prospect of equipping the F-3 with an energy cannon or a directional combat laser. Absolutely all powers are working in this direction. The successful use of each weapon instantly turns an enemy aircraft, stuffed with complex electronics, into a defenseless, unguided flying object. As for the F-3 missiles, a launcher for the American air-to-air and air-to-ground missiles will be used with a high probability. Although the Japanese have been conducting their own research in this area since 2013, there is no information on successful prototypes. It seems that the F-3 will become an outstanding fighter and a formidable rival of the Russian Su-57 and Chinese Chengdu J-20. The question is, when? Right now, the budget for the creation of F-3 is $45 billion, but this was not always the case. For example, the project started in 2010, and the contract with Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, the main developer of the F-3, was signed only in October 2020. Amazing tardiness. The main technical partner was determined in December 2020. It will be the Lockheed Martin Company. However, this could be predicted without much difficulty. Going further, the exact configuration of the airframe and the exterior of the F-3 should have appeared back in 2015. But the amount of money was not even enough to develop digital layouts. This situation has developed not only because of the slowness of the Japanese government, but also because of the intransigence of the main partner of the land of the rising sun, the United States. At first, the Americans refused to share their secret technologies for a long time. They were afraid that the secrets would fall to the Russians. Then, when the first Russian 5th generation fighter, the Su-57, became a reality, the United States pushed for Japan's usual purchase of new F-35 fighters. Japan, on the other hand, feared losing the technology of building fighters forever, so it sought to obtain a license, as was the case with the 4th generation F-15J DJ Eagle and the F-2AB fighters. The Mitsubishi Heavy Industries Corporation stated directly that if there is no license agreement, the link between generations of engineers will be interrupted, and in a few years, there will simply be no specialists of the required profile in the country, so one can only dream of F-3. And this is a direct threat to the country's sovereignty. Today's military aircraft fleet of the country is about 330 fighters. The most massive combat aircraft of the Japanese Air Force is the F-15 DJ Eagle fighter. There are 189 of these in service. This is nothing more than the McDonnell Douglas F-15 Eagle of the McDonnell Douglas Corporation, which has long been bought by Boeing. The first fighters were supplied from the United States and then produced at the facilities of the Japanese Mitsubishi Heavy Industries Company under license. The fighter performed well against Russian MiGs during the Israeli operations in Lebanon and the Gulf War. However, that was a long time ago. The second most used fighter is the F-2AB, a licensed version of the American F-16, also produced by Mitsubishi. The Japanese Air Force uses 88 of these craft, which were produced from 1995 to 2011, but they also do not guarantee the superiority in the sky in 5 to 10 years. The situation is aggravated by the problems with the operation of the American F-35 fighters. which, according to the Japanese military, should serve as a technological bridge between fourth-generation fighters and the future F-3. As part of the contract, Japan expects to receive 105 F-35A aircraft and 42 F-35B units with a short takeoff and vertical landing. A small part of the equipment is planned to be built at the production facilities of Mitsubishi Heavy Industries Corporation under license. However, this plane is just a misfortune. Last year, 4 accidents were recorded. 3 planes crashed, 1 made an emergency landing. And in 2019, one of the first F-35, transferred to Japan by America, crashed. In light of these problems, the government of the Land of the Rising Sun became thoughtful and began to fear that American supplies would not strengthen the country's position in the air. After all, the F-15J DJ Eagle and F-2AB are aging rapidly. The technological gap could lead to a drop in Japan's defenses, which would provoke powerful neighbors to aggressive actions. It should be noted that despite Japan's advancement in various technologies, engineering traditions and the creation of military equipment are a special feature. In this area, the continuity of generations of engineers is extremely important. The reasons for serious concern about Japan's security are not unfounded. Although the country is NATO's main ally outside the bloc, the incident between Turkey and Russia in Syria's Idlib showed that with a real threat of open confrontation with the Russian Federation, the North Atlantic Bloc will not stand up, even for its member. Back then, in order to hush up the conflict, Turkey purchased the S-400 anti-aircraft missile system, SAM, from Russia instead of the American Patriot, for which the country's military leadership fell under U.S. sanctions. But Cowabunga battle cry really thundered when the Chinese Chairman Xi ordered the Chinese Marines to prepare for war on October 19, 2020. Gaining power, China is constantly putting pressure on the former metropolis, claiming the Senkaku Islands, the Chinese name is Diaoyu Dao. Here the Japanese are to blame, having provided support to the Chinese economy with loans and grants worth $45 billion in prices of the late 20th century. It's the amount comparable to making the F-3. And they also trained a whole generation of Chinese engineers. China has embarked on the path of modernization on the Japanese